been a troublemaker, I've been a late night player, I've been broke as a joke, I've been a money maker, I've been a record breaker, taking credit as an educator, I've been known to spit the flows and make a shaky, shaky thing, popping, locking, stopping, let it hang. Watch us as we drop this hip hop, it's like it stings. We make the whole room drop and everybody saying, we want the funk, we gotta have that funk. We kick it old school, we think we're so cool. We take it back to the past, we gonna act a fool. Up jumps the middle finger, make my...
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Sports Buzz, a Fanatical View. I am your host, Scott D. Lewis, here live in studio, Comcast Cable, Channel 23, downtown Danbury, Connecticut, on this polar vortex kind of chilly day, November 9th. That nice fall Indian summer we were having has quickly turned, and it's getting pretty cold out there. It's going to be bitter. Thought it was getting cold this week. Wait till this weekend. It is going to be bitter cold this weekend. But I'm here. We're back live this week. We keep doing this on again, off again, a rotating schedule. We're here 1 week, off of next week. Here 1 week, we're off again next week. And then it's Thanksgiving. So we do have, as of right now at least, things scheduled for all of December. Hopefully after the holiday, we will be here and we'll be ready to go and really get a few consecutive weeks before Christmas in, and that would be good to end the year that way. But there you see the phone number, 203-792-4101. We're here until 7 o'clock, so feel free to call in at any time in the next 30 minutes. My right-hand man, Mr. Bob Broad Jr., whose birthday we missed last week at Halloween. We wish him a belated happy birthday. He is directing again as we're kind of flying with the small skeleton crew again. And hopefully we'll get that straightened out as well after the holidays and get back to the usual situation. And it is a sad day in the local Danbury sports area, and I know Bob is doing the show with a heavy heart, as the Danbury Westerners lost a man who dedicated his time, 23 years worth of time, to the cause over there at Rogers Park, and that is Mike Malone, who passed away last night. And Mike, it was great this year because at the celebrity breakfast that they have, the charity event every year, he did win the Siri Award for his efforts and contribution. That kind of goes to somebody who's made a long-lasting impression on the local sports scene in the area and helping others out, and he certainly has done that. So he was the former president of the Westerners and also the COO, and as I said, he worked with the Westerners for 23 years. He owned the soda pop company up in New Milford, and I don't know if maybe his ties to New Milford, or maybe he just knew that Dave King, a New Milford guy, and also the guy along with Candy down here who runs things, but maybe he knew Dave was just a good songwriter, singer-songwriter, and that's why he asked Dave to write the Westerners theme song. So it was Mike Malone who got Dave to do that. Bob, if you want to go ahead, there it is. We're going to run this.
Down at the park, it's time to turn on the lights because the Danbury Westerners are playing tonight. They'll be swinging their bats and they'll be hitting home runs. It's a night of excitement and family fun. Westy helps everybody cheer on the team as the crowd snacks on popcorn and delicious ice cream. On a warm summer night, you know it's always a treat. Westerners baseball simply cannot be beat. Everybody knows the score. The fans are screaming out for more. Excitement builds on through the night as victory is soon in sight. The runner advances as he heads for home plate. Rounding the bases, there will be no debate. When the last run is in, the fans will proclaim the Danbury Westerners have won the game.
That's it. Great little song that Dave King wrote, and that is the Westerners theme song. So a little tribute there to Mike Malone, and maybe that can lift the spirits of the Westerners family, who is suffering today after hearing the news of his passing last night. So we send our condolences to his family and his extended family and everybody who's come through the Westerners organization and has had the opportunity to work with him. He was a great guy. I know I certainly had good interactions with him over the years as I've helped out with things there down at Rogers Park. So he will be missed. Speaking of baseball, while we were gone, I wonder if Mike was a Dodgers fan or an Astros fan, or rooting for one or the other. But the World Series did wrap up last week. It was a pretty thrilling World Series. The final, Game 7, was anticlimactic, to say the least, as the Astros jumped out to that 5-0 lead. The Dodgers had bases loaded in the first, 2 on in the second, 2 on in the third, could not get any runners in. And the Astros kind of settled in and cruised basically to the 5-1 victory. And how about the Connecticut kids? Unbelievable. George Springer, MVP, out of New Britain, went to UConn. Played with Matt Barnes, the Bethel kid who plays with the Red Sox. And there you see Charlie Morton, who just pitched outstanding. The Game 7 against the Yankees and the Game 7 against the Dodgers. Unreal. The Joe Barlow, Reading native. We talked about him for years on the show here when he pitched for Pittsburgh. And he had some injuries later in his career, kind of moved around, was with the Braves for a little bit. Wasn't doing so good. All of a sudden he ended up on the Astros this year, pitched a pretty solid year, and then in the playoffs he just came up large. And really just fantastic for Connecticut baseball fans. Talking about the Westerners and anybody in this area that, watches baseball, loves baseball. It was great to see the 2 Connecticut kids really stepping up. And as far as the World Series go, it was really, I think, about Game 2 and Game 5, the 2 extra inning games that the Dodgers lost both of. First in Game 2, up 3-1 in the 8th inning, and their vaunted bullpen came in and they blew it. They lost 7-6 in 11, I believe. And then in Game 5 in Houston, after evening the series at 2-2, jumping out to a 4-0 lead with Clayton Kershaw on the mound in that Game 5. Could have come home with a 3-2 lead. He gives up 4 runs there. And then they retake the lead 7-4. He gives up a run. They go to the bullpen. They blow it. They end up losing that game 13-12, I think, in 10 innings, 11 innings. Those were the 2 games that they just could not overcome, even though they won Game 6, beating Verlander in a really tight game. But Yu Darvish was a disaster in his 2 games, and especially in Game 7. And that was that. And how about the home run records? In a season that saw Major League Baseball set home runs for most combined home runs by all players in the league, the playoffs were the same, as they went over 100 home runs in all the playoff games combined, which was a record. So there was clearly something going on with the baseball this year. Some of the pitchers, as we mentioned, Darvish was a disaster. Started to be reports about, the stitching was too tight, which was, one of the reasons the ball's been jumping off the bat and all the home runs were being hit. And it also led to guys who were, off-speed pitchers who relied on sliders, not be able to get the same grip and not being effective with their sliders. So power pitchers had a little more chance to do well. But if you were relying on a curveball slider, you couldn't get quite the grip. At least that was what the story was. We'll never know. They'll never come out and actually say it. But it certainly seemed like something was going on in the world of baseball this year with the home runs. And that's that. We're waiting on a Yankee manager. Still no manager has been named in New York. We're waiting on the MVP. We figure Judge will definitely be Rookie of the Year. Benintendi was giving him some challenge, but I think Judge's September probably wrapped it up. I believe Altuve will probably get the MVP, but you never know. We could see a Fred Lynn situation, MVP, Rookie of the Year from Judge. We're waiting on that as well. All right, so that wraps up baseball. We will move on to football now before we get to some other stuff. I really wish Bob was in here at this point because I would love to hear him talk about what is going on in the swamp lands of New York, or is it New Jersey? The G-Men ramshackled in the rain, 51-17, and it wasn't even that close. What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on out there? Unreal. Players being suspended, guys not coming back from the bye week on time, claiming travel, guys, not responding to being benched and blowing off team meetings and practices. And then, of course, the effort on the field in a 51-17 game against the Rams, where it clearly looked like players were quitting on themselves, on their team, on the fans, on the whole organization, the tri-state area, the NFL, their families, you name it. They quit all around. So what is going to happen with the Giants? We don't know going forward. They're at San Francisco this weekend, who is 0-9. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, who was traded surprisingly from the Patriots to San Francisco, will get the start out there in San Francisco, and the Giants could really be embarrassed if they lose to an 0-9 team. But they've only got one win themselves. Really just falling on hard times. It was unbelievable to me, really, that they were getting such recognition as being a team to beat in the NFC, a possible Super Bowl contender, and they have just fallen flat, and they cannot get up. I'll tell you one thing, though. I certainly enjoyed putting Jared Goff into my starting lineup on my fantasy team this weekend. That went over well as I cruise to yet another victory. I am in first place in the SMAC League. Thank you very much. And Jared Goff, who has been my backup, but famous Jameis Winston, I knew has been banged up and not playing well, so I went back to Goff this week, and he delivered a monster game against the Giants. It was really a no-brainer decision. I looked at that Giants defense, and I said, you know what? I think Jared Goff might have a good day. I didn't know he was going to have that big of a day, but that was certainly nice. So I know Bob is really not happy about what's going on. This has got to be as bad as it's been since the pre-Bill Parcells era, I would think. I don't think it's ever gotten that bad since then. They've always had, even in the times that they struggled somewhat, they never were god-awful, and that is what they are right now. Interesting to see, is the whole thing going to get blown up? And here we see a team that was supposed to be pretty bad this year, but is showing what you can do when you put forth effort, and that is the Jets. Flying by the Bills 31-24 last Thursday night. Thank God it wasn't that color rush situation from a couple of years ago where the Bills were wearing all red and the Jets were wearing all green. These uniforms I can handle a little bit more. But the Jets are 4-5, keeping themselves involved in a possible wild card position. They got by the Bills, who fall to 5-3. And the Jets are at the Bucs this weekend. I mentioned famous Jameis is out with the injury, so guess who they're going to face? Fitzmagic, Ryan Fitzpatrick, the old friend. He's going to be starting in Tampa Bay this weekend, who is a surprising disappointment at 2-6. They'll be playing without their top wide receiver, Mike Evans, who was suspended for his part in a fight this past weekend. And, I think the Jets have a chance to go down there and win, although I'm sure Fitzpatrick is going to be chomping at the bit to get back. Remember, when he was with the Jets, he did lead them. Oh, wait, he didn't lead them to the playoffs. That's right. They lost to the Bills in that final game of the season. Almost. Not quite. But I'm sure he's going to try to get a win against his former team there. But the Jets are, looking at the possibility of facing a banged-up Bucs team who's shorthanded also because of suspension and underperforming big time, and move to 5-5, which would really put them in a position to have a legitimate shot down the stretch for a wild card. Why not? The Jets are certainly playing tough. A little more balance with the 1-2 punch of Forte and Powell in the running game. Some surprises in the receiving game. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, the former Buck as well, who had troubles with DUIs and whatnot, and the Bucs had to ship him out, and he's cleaned up his act, and he's been a surprise tight end for the Jets, playing well. And they are, they're playing decent. Their defense has been a little bit less than what you would want. They've given up some of these big leads and given up a lot of points as well. So hopefully their defense can shape up. But offensively, I think that they have a lot of balance and a lot of weapons, it seems, which is very surprising. Patriots coming off a bye week. They are 6-2 after they beat the Chargers 21-13 2 weeks ago. Patriots offensively have not been that great this year, but their defense has rounded out into shape. But they have lost their team captain, defensive captain Hightower. So that is something they're going to have to overcome. But they have not given up, I don't believe, more than 20 points in their last 3 games. So they really have rounded into shape defensively. Hopefully they can continue that. They head to Denver for a Sunday night game. They'll be facing Osweiler. Patriots fan, remember a couple years ago, really disappointing game out there in Denver. The referees were just unbelievable in that game. So always bad memories for the Patriots. They've never had much success, no matter what era it has been out there in Mile High City. But hopefully they can get past the Broncos, who are not playing well at all. They benched their quarterback, gone back to Osweiler. They're 3-5. They've been really struggling offensively and not doing well. So Patriots will try to move to 7-2, win their 5th straight. We'll see how that goes. Elsewhere in the AFC East, the Dolphins are 4-4. They're at the Panthers, who are 6-3. Panthers are an interesting team, much like the Steelers. All you hear is controversy coming out of Carolina and how they're not playing well. Yet you look up and they're 6-3, and they're right behind the Saints, who have shockingly run off 6 straight wins, and they play at the Bills. So the NFC South, I guess that is against the AFC East this week in some matchups with Dolphins at Panthers, Saints at Bills. So some interesting things going on there. Dolphins, I mentioned, 4-4, Bills 5-3. Elsewhere in the AFC, Steelers, I mentioned another team. All you hear is controversy, not playing well. Lo and behold, they're 6-2, and with really no competition in their division, as everybody else is below 500. Titans and Jags are 5-3, leading their AFC South division. Titans are at Bengals, who are 3-5. Jags are home against the Chargers, who are 3-5. And the Chiefs out west have a bye week this week. They could use it. I believe the Chiefs have had the most difficult schedule of anybody in the league, not only with the competition, but also with the fact that they've played multiple times on Thursday, multiple times on Monday, multiple times on Sunday night. I think they've had 6 primetime games, if I've got my count correct, which I think is brutal for any team. So I'm thinking they get this bye week. They can only play a certain amount of primetime games throughout the year, so they can't have very many more. It'd be nice for them if they can get into a bit of a routine, get back to playing Sunday afternoon football, because I believe they've lost 3 out of their last 4 after going 5-0 to start the season. In the NFC, Eagles are on a bye, but they have the best record in football. How about that? Fly, Eagle Fly, 8-1, and they look pretty good. Wentz looks sharp in his second year, and they are playing pretty well. Cowboys at 5-3 are facing life finally for the next 6 games, although I think there's one more possible stay of execution for Ezekiel Elliott, but his suspension was reinstated today, and as of right now, he's out for the next 6 weeks. So they lose their top running back. They'll have to go to their backups, Darren McFadden, Alfred Morris. They're 5-3, and they play at Atlanta. Super Bowl representative from the NFC who's been struggling, but again, at 4-4, not struggling where they put themselves out yet, but they are 4-4 not playing great. Cowboys at Atlanta this weekend. Redskins with a surprising win in Seattle to keep their season alive at 4-4. They're home against the Vikings, a first-place team from the black and blue division. Vikings are at 6-2. They don't have much competition because the Bears are just not that good at 3-5, and the Packers are playing without Aaron Rodgers. They're 4-4, but they were 4-2, and they're losing ever since Rodgers went down. The Lions, I guess, maybe are still in contention at 4-4. But you can't quite trust the Lions to be any good. But, they are in striking distance. And then it's the Rams out west at 6-2. They're home against the Texans this week at 5-3, but the Texans are now playing without who would have been probably the Rookie of the Year, the Clemson quarterback who won the championship last year, Deshaun Watson. Brutal non-contact practice injury, blew out his ACL last week. So they're really looking at an uphill battle without him because he was really invigorating and really playing an exciting brand of football. So the Rams out west NFC, and they're 6-2. Seahawks 5-3. They play the Cardinals tonight, who are playing without Carson Palmer. A lot of injuries in the NFL, especially the quarterbacks, but also big-time players are out. Cardinals 4-4, trying to hold on desperately. Seahawks 5-3 after that shocking loss to Washington this weekend. All right, college football, I will just mention as we're inside 10 minutes, I believe. Penn State is toast. Talk about schedules. They were at Michigan, won a great game, or actually that game was home, and then they were at Ohio State. They had a 14-point lead, but they really wore down and looked fatigued in the fourth quarter, lost a last-second defeat, and then they followed that up with the loss to Michigan State. And meanwhile, that Ohio State game, Ohio State played Penn State off a bye week, while Penn State was coming off a game against Michigan, and then they had to play Michigan State the week after. Come on, that schedule is ridiculous. But Penn State is toast, so they are out. So the playoff rankings are Georgia, number 1, Bama, number 2, Notre Dame, number 3, Clemson, number 4. Georgia, Bama undefeated, Notre Dame, Clemson with 1 loss each. Oklahoma has 1 loss, TCU has 1 loss. But how about Miami? 8-0, and Wisconsin 9-0 at 7-8. I think those are the 2 teams that might have a chance to slip past some of these other teams and get into the top 4. I do believe Miami and Notre Dame play at some point. Maybe, I'm not sure when that game is, but I do believe they play this year. So that can go a long way to determining the top 4. So I did want to mention that. NBA action. How about this? I was not ready for the NBA. I thought it started too early. These seasons seem to be getting longer and longer and longer. And then, of course, the Celtics suffered that brutal injury on opening night to Gordon Hayward. Lo and behold, the Boston Celtics have now won 10 straight games after losing back-to-back with that injury in Game 1 against Cleveland. And then they came home and were clearly emotionally spent and lost a tight game against Milwaukee. They have run off 10 straight victories since that point and have the NBA's best record, 10-2. They beat the Lakers last night in an ugly game as they were shorthanded even more with Al Horford being out in concussion protocol. And then the rookie who's been playing tremendous, Jason Tatum, went out early with a slight injury to his ankle. Hopefully it's nothing serious. Didn't look like it was that bad, but he could not return. And Kyrie Irving also banged up his knee. And he was a little shaky, but he did make some big baskets down the stretch as they held off the pesky Lakers, who are 5-6. And for all you ball fans out there, I don't know. I mean, the Lakers are 5-6, and he is more of a distributing point guard. His shot is horrible. At least it is right now. I know in college he shot a decent percentage, but oh my God, he could not shoot to save his life last night. Was terrible, as it was really my first look at him in the NBA. Missing gimme shots in the lane, missing 3-pointers that he was clanking off the back iron, if he even hit the iron. Really throwing up big-time bricks, and he is not shooting well at all. But the Celtics, best team in the NBA right now. The Pistons right behind them at 8-3. Orlando 7-4. Toronto 6-4. Philly 6-4. And how about the New York Knickerbockers at 6-5? They have won 5 out of 6 before losing last night. Now I'm a little bit worried about Porzingis with the elbow situation. There's some talk about a possible procedure on his elbow. This guy has been playing tremendous. He's second in the league at scoring at 30 points a game, but he's had problems staying on the court. And there we see the other rookie right now, Frankie Nicotine, the French kid who's played well for them. But Porzingis, he's got to stay on the court. But there is life back in the Garden as they have played well. There we see the Hornets, Kemba Walker's team at 5-6, tied with the Cavaliers, who are ninth best team right now in the East at 5-6. The Cavs off to a pretty mediocre start, to say the least, and the Nets at 4-7. Former Nick Carmelo Anthony and the Oklahoma City Thunder, that's not going so well. They are 4-6. So not playing well at all out of the gate. They made all those moves. Paul George, bringing Carmelo Anthony. Of course, they got Westbrook there, the reigning MVP. But what's up with them at 4-6? So not good. But really, the Celtics have been a complete surprise. Kyrie Irving has played great, and he really hasn't had to do it with any big scoring outings. He's really averaging, only around 20 points a game. But the ball movement has been tremendous. Jaylen Brown in his second year has played great. Tatum, the rookie, has played great. Horford really is fitting in. They got some big guys who you wouldn't know of. And Marcus Morris, who was out at the beginning of the season, he's played the last three and played well. So really a nice effort team all around. Terry Rozier is really rounding into shape this year. And defensively, they played very, very well. And the thing I've been impressed with is ball movement and the way they're playing as far as that goes. So that has been a good sign, and really just invigorating to see them play so well after that horrific injury where it looked like they could be in big trouble and emotionally in big trouble. All right, only a couple minutes left as I get the short notice. Once again, 1 week I'll get longer notice. Who knows? We can keep working on that. Hockey, NHL, Rangers have had a full recovery from their slow start. 8-7-2 now after winning 5 straight. Beat the Bruins last night 4-2. Bruins had tied that game up 1-1 midway through the first period, and then they promptly gave up back-to-back goals over a 29-second 29 seconds apart to go down 3-1 in the first. And then when they cut it to 3-2 in the third, they got a power play with about 6 minutes left, and they take a horrific penalty themselves to take away their power play, which would have given them a chance to tie it. So they did not do that. So Bruins are 6-5-3 at 15 points, Rangers at 18 points. All right, the other thing I want to mention, FIFA, the final stages of playoff qualifying takes place in Italy, plays tomorrow and Tuesday in a playoff with Switzerland, I believe. Italy better make it. The other soccer thing I want to mention, hats off to Bethel U12 and our friend Joe Shaboo, his son Andreas Shaboo, in the semifinal of this, scored 4 goals in a 4-3 victory, and then the Bethel boys went up and beat East Lyme, I believe, 3-1 in the championship game. So the Bethel U12s got it done this weekend. Congratulations, and we are out of here. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We'll see you after that, and we'll be back in December.